Have you ever stopped to ask yourself how much 1 hour of your life is really worth? Not what you're paid, but what it's truly worth to you. Because every time you trade your time for money, you're selling fragments of your only irreplaceable asset, your very existence. And the most curious thing is that often we do this not out of necessity, but out of desire. The desire to have, to accumulate, to show off. The question that lingers is, are we buying comfort or mortgaging our freedom? We live in a society that taught us to believe that time is money. But this phrase, repeated almost like a mantra, hides a much deeper and more unsettling truth. In practice, what it really means is that your life's time has a price. And most people sell it daily, without realizing how much they're actually giving away in exchange for a paycheck at the end of the month or for the installment of that object of desire that feels essential. The problem is that by doing this unconsciously, we become trapped in a cycle. Working to pay, paying to maintain, maintaining to keep on working. The equation is simple but brutal. If you earn $25 an hour and buy something that costs $5,000, you're trading 200 hours of your life for an object that, in a few months, will already be outdated. And that's not even counting taxes, commute time, mental energy spent, and accumulated fatigue. When we lay the numbers out on the table, we realize that the price of things goes far beyond their financial cost. It carries an existential cost that rarely gets factored in. But it should. The biggest trap lies in the way we've been taught to consume. The culture of deserving pushes us to spend as a reward for our effort, even when that effort is eating away at our physical, mental, and emotional health. And so, the time that could be invested in rest, learning, affection, or purpose ends up hijacked by obligations that don't always make sense. We buy objects, but we sell life. All because we've never stopped to do the most important math. How much is 1 hour of my freedom worth? That's the heart of the issue. In the end, it's not about money. It's about clarity. About knowing exactly what's at stake every time we say yes to a purchase. When we trade time for consumption without awareness, we give up the only currency that cannot be recovered. In this context, freedom isn't about how much you earn, but about how much of your time you can keep without selling it. And that starts with a simple act: doing the right math. Unlike money, time cannot be saved, invested, or recovered. It slips through our fingers, silent and constant, and every second spent never comes back. In Stoic philosophy, the wise warned that the greatest human tragedy is to waste life as if it were infinite. And today, with all the distractions, pressures, and promises of instant gratification, we continue to sell our hours as if we had an endless supply. In this context, math brings us an uncomfortable clarity. When you calculate how many hours of your life are required to sustain the lifestyle you've chosen, or the one you've been pushed to desire, you begin to see what once felt invisible. Freedom, in this sense, is not an abstract ideal. It's a number. It's the difference between the time you have to sell to survive and the time you're able to keep to truly live. But the illusion of consumption distances us from this reality. We're led to believe that freedom lies in having more purchasing options, more access, more status. Yet the more we buy, the more we become trapped in the cycle of production, debt, and time scarcity. And then, paradoxically, the more we earn, the less free we become. Because our expenses grow alongside our income, and the wheel never stops turning. The real philosophical question isn't, how much does this cost, but how much of my life am I giving up for this? When we start thinking that way, our choices begin to shift. Not out of fear or scarcity, but out of awareness. Because we understand that every financial decision is, in fact, a decision about what we truly value. And what we value reveals who we are. Math shows us the numbers. Philosophy helps us interpret them. And when we combine the two, we find a compass. One that points not only toward financial freedom, but toward the freedom to be. In the end, Freedom isn't something you achieve all at once. It's built hour by hour, choice by choice. When you learn to calculate the true cost of your decisions, not just in dollars but in lifetime, your relationship with money begins to change. You stop seeing it as the goal and start seeing it as a tool. A tool to gain time, to be present, to find peace. And this is where financial education meets philosophy. When you realize that every expense is a way of saying what you value, and every value defines the kind of life you're building. It's not about living in fear of spending, but about spending with awareness. Using math as a tool for clarity, and reflection as a compass for wise choices. Because the greatest luxury of the modern world isn't found in a price tag or a first-class trip. It lies in the ability to say no to what doesn't make sense, to reject the slavery of unconscious consumption, to wake up one day and decide what to do with your time. Not because you retired, but because you planned. Because you set yourself free while there was still life left to be lived. So here's the question. If time is your most valuable currency, are you spending it or investing it? Because in the end, it's not about what you can buy, but about what you're missing out on by trading your life away. The calculation of freedom isn't just on paper. It lives in your daily choices. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to do the math again. If this video made you rethink how you've been using your time and money, then the next step is to keep walking this path of awareness. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every piece of content here is made to help you see with more clarity, spend with more purpose, and live with more freedom. After all, it's not just about numbers, it's about your life, and it deserves to be lived with intention.